وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي تطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من رحمة لي والإحسان إلي وتفضلي علي بجودك وكرمك، فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جودا كريم جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فانق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشاهدا نجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظاهر يعاذده، قهر بعزته عزاه وتواضع لعظمته العظمى، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه، فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد فكاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه هامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين ويناجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. الحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير، وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر، وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك، صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، واعزز به ذلتنا، واغني به عائلنا، واقضي به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، واعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، واعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق. آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم برحمتك في الصالحين فأدخلنا، وفي عليين فارفعنا، وبكأس من معين من عين سلسبيل فاسقنا، ومن الحور العين برحمتك فزوجنا، ومن الولدان المخلدين كأنهم لؤلؤ مكنون فاخدمنا، ومن ثمار الجنة ولحوم الطير فأطعمنا، ومن ثياب السندس والحرير والاستبرق فألبسنا، وليلة القدر وحج بيتك الحرام وقتلا في سبيلك فوفق لنا، وصالح الدعاء والمسألة فاستجب لنا. وإذا جمعت الأولين والآخرين يوم القيامة فارحمنا، وبراءة من النار فاكتب لنا، وفي جهنم فلا تغلنا، وفي عذابك وهوانك فلا تبتلنا، ومن الزقوم والضريع فلا تطعمنا، ومع الشياطين فلا تجعلنا، وفي النار على وجوهنا فلا تكببنا، ومن ثياب النار وسرابيل القطران فلا تلبسنا، ومن كل سوء يا لا إله إلا أنت، بحق لا إله إلا أنت فنجنا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك أن تجعل فيما تقضي وتقدر من الأمر المحتوم في الأمر الحكيم، من القضاء الذي لا يرد ولا يبدل، أن تكتبني من حجاج بيتك الحرام المبرور حجهم، المشكور سعيهم، المغفور ذنوبهم، المكفر عن سيئاتهم، وأن تجعل فيما تقضي وتقدر أن تطيل عمري في خير وعافية، وتوسع في رزقي، وتجعلني ممن تنتصر به لدينك، ولا تستبدل بي غيري. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان، أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه، ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. إلهي وقف السائلون ببابك، ولاذ الفقراء بجنابك، ووقفت سفينة المساكين على ساحل بحر جودك وكرمك، يرجون الجواز إلى ساحة رحمتك. إلهي إن كنت لا تغفر في هذا الشهر الشريف إلا لمن أخلص لك في صيامه وقيامه، فما للمذنب المقصر إذا غرق في بحر ذنوبه وآثامه. إلهي إن كنت لا ترحم إلا المطيعين فما للعاصين، وإن كنت لا تقبل إلا من العاملين فمن للمقصرين. إلهي ربح الصائمون وفاز القائمون ونجا المخلصون، ونحن عبيدك المذنبون، فارحمنا برحمتك واعتقنا من النار بعفوك يا كريم يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا علي يا عظيم يا غفور يا رحيم، أنت الرب العظيم الذي ليس كمثله شيء، وهو السميع البصير. وهذا شهر عظمته وكرمته وشرفته وفضلته على الشهور، وهو الشهر الذي فرضت صيامه عليه، وهو شهر رمضان الذي أنزلت فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، وجعلت فيه ليلة القدر وجعلتها خيرا من 1000 شهر. فيا ذا المن ولا يمن عليك، من علي بفكاك رقبتي من النار في من تمن عليه، وادخلني الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى إلى روح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل بيت محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Inshallah, as we'll have our respected Sheikh Shafiq addressing today's gathering, as we're commemorating the lady Khadija alayha salam. Inshallah, after this, we'll have the Salat al-Maghribain offered at its prime time. Inshallah, after that, we'll have a question and answer session after the iftar. So do please, inshallah, make the most out of the sessions. There will be also a kahoot just towards, again, after, once we resume with the question and answer session, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق السماوات والأرض، إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين، ورحمة الله على محبيهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقاتليهم وغاصب حقوق حقهم ومنكر فضائلهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتبارك في كتابه الحكيم وفرقانه المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. صلوات على محمد. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بما بنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. As we are marking the night that marks the shahadat, some say wafat, of Hazrat Khadija Tahira, we want to extend condolences to Imam Sahib al-Amr, Ajjalallahu ta'ala dhuhuru, and the believers all over the world, and to the Prophet himself and the family of the Prophet. As we mark this night, I wanted to just make sure that there was a couple of things that I wanted to clarify from our last discussion. And I know that our respected Sayyid has said that we will have the question and answer afterwards, but I feel that in case if some of them have to leave, I just wanted to clarify. And then it's a couple of simple matters. There's actually been a very interesting app that has been released by the World Federation of Khoja Communities, in which there's the any of the new masail of Ayatollah Sistani that were not there previously, that have been updated as of March 2022, as well as some of the differences between the fatwa of Marhum Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khoyi and other maraja as well. It is actually an app that has been released. If anybody wants it or they have not seen it on the WhatsApp or on the email, please let me know. And if our respected president feels that I can email it to you, then I just don't like to inundate people with emails and unnecessary messages. That's one of the reasons you've noticed that I don't usually send out forwards, and I don't send out so many emails unless there's something important or about Salatul Jummah. Having said that, there was a couple of things that I was researching on these on the fasting. The one thing that I didn't get a chance to mention in our first discussion was that niyyah, intention, is extremely important. I mean, without intention, there is no fasting, there is no any of our deeds or our ibadat. And if we look at how the intention is, for example, in Hajj, it's very different than the way the intention is in, for example, for Salat or for the fasting for Saum. And that is that the intention, of course, is wajib. It needs to be there, the niyyah. But it does not need to be spoken out loud. This is one thing that we have to keep in mind. And the intention, perhaps one of the reasons when you look at the philosophy of the intention, you find something very interesting and very unique. We are making an intention for fasting, to fast for the pleasure of Allah, qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala, just like when we bring our salat. But when we are doing our salat, for example, when we're about to recite salat of Maghrib and we are reciting behind Sayyid Taha, you are supposed to say, or at least supposed to know, sorry, pardon me, because this is where the difference comes in, that you are doing Salatul Jamaat, you're reciting behind Sayyid Taha, it is Salatul Maghrib, qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala. You're doing it for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, for example, I have just finished my wudu, I come running in, he is about to go into ruku. I say Allahu Akbar. I join him in ruku because otherwise my jamaat will not be correct if I don't join up into. Now, what happens in a case like that? I didn't do that full niyyah that I'm reciting salat behind Sayyid. It is Maghrib. Qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala. I didn't do any of that. I just went into ruku to join them. What happens to the salah? Jazakallah, okay? The niyyah is in the heart. You know why you are rushing. You know why you want to get there quickly. You want to join in Jamaat. It is the time of Maghrib. Inshallah, that's what we're assuming in this example. And so your intention is already there because your heart knows why you are there. As I said, for Hajj, there's a significant difference. I won't have the time to go into that now. And then when we join in, so that means that same thing applies for fasting. When we are at the beginning of Shahr Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, you can make the intention that I'm going to be fasting, inshallah, for the entire month of Ramadan. You can go step by step, day by day, or whatever. And then, at least in the back of your mind, in the intention that you have got, it does not have to be specified verbally. I remember, and I've mentioned this before as well. Our elders, sometimes when we had some madrasa teachers who had, a certain school of thought that they wanted to abide by, they would actually make you say, okay, I am doing Salatul Maghrib, 3 rakat, wajib, qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala, and then they would make you do Takbiratul Ihram. Alhamdulillah, that is good because at least that gave us an idea of what intention or niyyah is. But then now as we have grown and matured, inshallah, we understand that niyyah is something that we have got in our minds, in our hearts. And it is something that, of course, does need to be cleared. Okay, because if we are, for example, staying hungry, well, there's a reason why we're staying hungry. It's the month of Ramadan. We have not eaten or drunk anything. That in itself becomes the intention. One of the things that has been different, or actually has been amended by Ayatollah Sistani, actually, in this, the new, as I said, the update that has been taking place since March of the previous year. So just at the close of the pandemic, well, I shouldn't say the close of the pandemic. I don't think the pandemic will ever close, but at least when the major restrictions were lifted, there was a lot of updates that had come out and had been compiled. And one of the things that is actually unique of Sayyid's Masail, and if anybody is doing the taqleed of any other marja other than Ayatollah Al-Uzma, Sayyid Sistani, please speak to me about this afterwards, because as I said, what we have done, and I know Sayyid has been doing that as well whenever he has been talking about the Masail, is that we have been talking about Sayyid Sistani's Masail because the predominant or the majority of the Shia world is under his taqleed at the moment. So for example, if somebody who is elderly or somebody who finds fasting excessively difficult, okay, the wording is very clear, excessively difficult. That means that they cannot fast without significant harm coming to themselves, then they are exempted from fasting. That was clear. Everybody is clear on that. Under most of the maraja, you still have to give fidya. Okay, we have a lot of confusion in people's minds between fidya and kafara. In fact, even when I sometimes go to Qom and I'm sitting and talking with some of the ulama, even there's a bit of a misunderstanding between the fidya and the kafara. Kafara is what we call a penalty. Fidya is a replacement. Okay, so we will have, it happens every year. We get phone calls, and alhamdulillah, our staff now knows the difference between the two. They will explain to the person, do you break your fast? You just felt like having a hamburger and you just felt like having those fries, and no legitimate reason? Or are you sick? Are you ill? Are you diabetic? Do you have to take your medicine? Whatever. Fidya means replacement. That means you could not fast for that reason. What you have to do in place of that is to give one mudda, one amount or handful. It's some say it's about 3 kilos of food, or enough for one meal for a person who is mustahak, who is in need. Not somebody who is dying of hunger, but somebody who can use that food, who will benefit from that food. That is fidya. Now, that is if you cannot fast, and that way means that you have to make that fidya to be paid. If somebody cannot, for example, Sayyid Sistani's difference is, if somebody cannot fast because of excessive difficulty, and they do not fast, and they may not be able to give a fidya, then for them, even the fidya is exempt. Most of the other Maraja said that you still must give it. Now here, one thing to keep in mind as well is, again, a major misconception in people's minds. The first thing they will ask us is, Sheikh, how much is the fidya? And we tell them a certain amount. It used to be, up until the longest time, about $1.50, $2 maximum. This year, when we told people $3.50, they said, Ya Allah. And if you have gone to the supermarket and you've seen the price of chicken, you've seen the price of beef, you've seen the price of lentil per day. One meal per day. That's the difference between fidya. Kafara is slightly different. Okay, so we're talking about, thank you so much for clarifying that. And please, if I don't clarify something, let me know right away. Say, I'm counting on both of you to help me out. So that means that I couldn't fast, legitimate reason. I didn't. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is, let's say that right now, because of the timing, because of the excessive length of the fast, well, right now, alhamdulillah, it was better than what it was last year, the year before. I cannot fast. I have to take my medicine every 8 hours, for example. My first option is that I must fast before next Maha Ramadan. Okay, so keep that in mind. So, for example, right now, it's difficult for me. It's excessively difficult. I might faint. I don't feel well. I may get weak or whatever. I have got up until next Ramadan if I can fast. Okay, so when the winter comes and the days are much shorter and the fasts are within, for example, let's say if I have to take medicine every 8 hours and it's less than that, then I must do that. If that is not possible, and up until the next Ramadan I cannot fast, then these laws kick in. Okay, giving the fidya. The fidya is giving a meal to a person who might be in need, or giving a meal to a person. As I said, I want to clarify, it doesn't mean somebody has to be starving. If you know that somebody may not be able to make their ends meet and they could use the food, I give it to them. When people say, okay, how much is the fidya? How much do I have to give? And we say, $3 or $3.50, or up until last year was $2.50 or $2, whatever. Keep in mind, your responsibility when you are giving the fidya is to feed a person. If you trust an organization or a mu'assasa, a charity or an entity, and you give them the money, your responsibility is not absolved unless and until you are certain that they will give food to the mustahak, to somebody who is in need. Keep that in mind. So if you give it to a Halta organization, a fly-by-night organization that you don't know anything about, you may or may not trust, you just found out that, okay, they're doing fidya for $1.50 still, and I want to just give it to them. You've done no investigation, no tahqiq of whether that is correct or not. The responsibility is still on you. If they go and buy a lottery ticket with that money, the responsibility on Yawm al-Qiyamah will still be on your shoulders. Okay? So please keep in mind, the first preferred option is to you give the food to somebody yourself, or somebody. Doesn't have to be in town. Doesn't have to be here. The cost of feeding somebody in North America is significantly more expensive than, for example, in the third world. For example, in Afghanistan, in Iran, or in Iraq, or in Pakistan, or in India, it might be much cheaper. That is fine. You have that prerogative. You have that option. It doesn't have to be in a certain place or not. Remember, fitra is different. Fidya is different. Kafara is different as well. So I will leave it at that, inshallah, because as I said, we want to give our tribute to Hazrat Khadija Tahira as well. If there is anything that is not clarified, please bring it up at the time of the quick Q&A, inshallah. And therefore, we will ask the Mu'mineen to recite one salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. The Quran Majid addresses the Holy Prophet of Islam. It says to the Holy Prophet, Ya Rasul, O Muhammad, you remember the time when you were in need and we enriched you. A time came when you were poor and we gave you wealth. The Quran Majid is saying to the Holy Prophet that there was a time when you were not well-to-do and then we made you well-to-do. How beautifully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is narrating the surah of these ayats of the surah of the Holy Quran, in which Allah is talking about how the Prophet was enriched. What happened? Was it, and all of you know the history of Islam. Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send some, gold coins from the sky, from the heavens, from the clouds, and instead of rain, there was, silver and gold and emeralds and rubies falling down? Or was there something different that Allah is talking about? You will see that never, or I can say rarely, very few exceptions, and those exceptions can be counted on the hand, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come out of the blue and give any of his prophets, his Anbiya or his Rasul or his Mursaleen, something just sent down from the heavens without the prophet or without that Rasul having to do any work? Rarely. Yani there has to be an effort, and then the effort gets rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same thing applies, remember, as we are talking about praying for the Imam, the du'as that we have got. Dua iftita, a dua that was taught by Imam Sahib al-Amri wal Akhir al-Zaman. Beautiful recitations, may Allah bless you, inshallah. When talking about when the Imam comes, there will be peace and tranquility and security, but up until that time, there will be a lot of difficulties that will come. And those difficulties we see also in the life of and the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about? There was somebody who came to the Prophet of Islam and who gave everything she had to the Prophet, and said that this is for the sake of Islam, this is for the sake of the Holy Prophet, this is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that was none other than Hazrat Khadija Tahira salamullahi alayha. You can imagine the life that she had gone through. She was a princess. She was known as Malakatul Arab. La ilaha illallah. Malakatul Arab, that even men didn't have the amount of wealth and riches that she had had. And this did not just come, some people have wrongly said that, she got inheritance from her father, so that's why she was rich. Well, if that was the case, then how come her blood sister was not in the same position? The inheritance would have been the same. The inheritance, if it was just a matter of inheritance, would have been the same. And so everybody in the family of Hazrat Khadija Tahira salamullahi alayha should have been the same, should have been just as wealthy. It was her own intellectual ability, her brilliant business decisions, and her ability to maximize her profit in the time of that business empire that she built up eventually. And she had built it up to such an event, to such an extent that, I've given an example numerous times for the sake of those who are not here, for the sake of our youngsters. I'm just going to repeat it to my elders who have been listening to me for years. Forgive me, inshallah. But today, somebody's social status is determined by, number one, how many cars they have, what is the brand name of their car, what clothing do they use, is there a star or a shape or something on that clothing, and basically the size or the name on their house. This is how we determine. So when we are drawing, I have actually been to some masajids, and no, I don't need to go very far. My own children sometimes ask me, wow, there's a Beamer there. There's a Merc there. I wonder who owns that Rolls. Oh my God, that's a Bugatti. I couldn't even pronounce Bugatti until these kids told me what is a Bugatti. The price of that car is almost the same as that of a small airplane. MashaAllah. It is like, 15 or 20 Hyundais or Kias put together, and you can get one of those. I says, okay, if you want to go from A to B, what difference is it? Brother Shafiq, you don't understand. It's got heated seats. It's got massaging leather. It has got this and that. I said, okay, if you're going from here to Ottawa, I can understand that. But if you're coming from Kitchener to Waterloo, by the time the massage sets in or the seat heating gets going, you're already at the IHS. So what difference? Okay, no problem. I don't want to get into that discussion. I'll come back to what I was going, because if I start digressing, then we will be here till Salatul Layl time, and none of you will get iftar, and then you will hate me more than you already do. So basically, our social status is determined by what cars we have, what we drive, what we wear, our watches, and there are watches that cost the same as a car. I actually didn't even know that. MashaAllah. What a Rolex, Rado, and these things, mashallah, some are made of gold. Please, men, it is haram for you to wear them if they are made of gold, pure gold. That is besides the point. If I was to tell you that I have a friend who has got 200 Rolls Royces or Bugattis or Beamers, BMWs, the first thing I'm sure you will say is, can you please give me his WhatsApp number or his address? I want to go cook iftar for him or them. I want to go give them some donuts and some gift. I said, why? He said, because if somebody's got 200 Mercedes, then I'm sure he has got a little bit extra. Maybe he might even give me one mark because he doesn't need 200, right? I've been to places in the Middle East. I don't want to name that. It's a place I go to regularly for my meetings and my work. And over there, I visited families where there are 2 people in the house, 2 drivers in the house, and 4 cars. And I'm trying to figure that out. Like, are you putting 1 foot on that pedal and 1 foot on the other car's pedal? How are you driving 2 cars per person? They tell me, no. Depending on what day of the week it is, we drive this. I want you to understand for a moment. Somebody is at that station, and I know them. You'll be very close to me and very kind to me because I know somebody who has got that means of what we can call happiness. No, I'm not going to use the word happiness. The means of livelihood. That is very... Imagine for a moment that somebody had enough cars to make a line from Kitchener to Toronto. How wealthy is that person? I'm not giving you a fictitious figure. I am telling you what history has told me, that in those days in the Arabian Peninsula, one's social status was determined by how many camels they had, how strong and healthy those camels were, how prominent those horses were. And that's how one's social status was determined in the Arabian Peninsula, that if people had 5 or 10 camels that were those prominent camels, if they had 10 or 20 horses, which were those wealthy horses that they would take, that person would be known as a rich, would be known as wealthy, would be known as a social elite. Hazrat Khadija had enough camels, had enough horses to make a single line from Makkah Mukarramah to Medina Munawwara. That is a distance of 220 kilometers. She had enough animals to make a line, single line from there to there. Ahsant, Tashakur. She was so wealthy that everybody would say that there was nobody more wealthy than Hazrat Khadija, even amongst the men. Malikatul Arab was not a title given to her easily. But the difference was that wealth, and this is where I'm talking to myself, not to any of you. Sometimes we have wealth and that wealth changes us. We can't part with it. It's difficult for somebody when they come to say, we need the help for the month of Ramadan. We need to give this for the month of Ramadan. We are building a Husainiyah. We're building a masjid. We are publishing a book. We're doing this khairat. This alim might need some help. This zakir is in a difficulty. That gharib is there. We're working on some projects in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or in Iraq. It's difficult to part with that money. Difficult to write that check. And believe me, my father will bear witness to this. We have gone to people's houses for fundraising. Those who we know are well-to-do and would have been able to. I'll give you a check tomorrow. Please come back. We go tomorrow. Just give me a couple more days. Come back on Friday. We go on Friday. It's not ready yet. Give us the weekend, Monday. Just ask him how many times we have gone to people whose houses are beautiful mansions, whose weddings of their children were on yachts and boats, whose places of honeymoon were, in the tropics in this nice area. But to part with that money was very difficult. And sometimes the money owns us instead of us owning the money. Sometimes our reputation controls us rather than us controlling our reputation. And this is why our ulama and the urafa have said, sometimes the most dangerous people are those whose nafs owns them rather than them controlling their nafs. We have a lady in the history of Islam who was at that level, who at the time of her demise was eating leaves and grass, whatever was available from the ground. Imagine going from that to that. I had one of our brothers once tell me, right here in this community, he says, Sheikh, you don't know the feeling. And he was right, I don't know the feeling. To go from that level to living in an apartment or a townhouse. You don't know the feeling going from an owned or rented house to a rented place, owned house to a rented place. And I looked at that person. I said, yes, you're probably right. But history has told us that, yes, there was somebody who was in that position. And that was Lady Khadija. When the Prophet would come to her and say, oh, Khadija, we need to free a slave. Islam needs to spread. Jafar at-Tayyar needs to go to Abyssinia. We need to have this delegation to go to there. And we need to do this. She would give the money so wholeheartedly, so willingly, that if the Prophet would ask for 500 dirhams, she would give him 5,000 dirhams. So much so, because those of you who are husbands, you know that if your wife is earning, it is not allowable for you to take her money and use it in the household expenses. That is our wajibat as the husband, as the head of the household. If she gives it willingly, that is up to her. That is between her and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we cannot force it or demand it. Hazrat Khadija reached a point and says, Ya Rasulullah, whatever I have belongs to you. I don't want you to come and ask me for permission to take this dinar or this dirham, Ya Rasulullah. Whatever I have got, it belongs to you, it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not come and ask me. She gave everything in the way of Rasulullah, the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where sometimes our ladies would complain and say what our life was before and what it is now. Never once do we have any utterance from Hazrat Khadija saying, Ya Rasulullah, yesterday I was Malikatul Arab, today I have to eat dry leaves. Yesterday I was the Queen of Arabia, today I'm being sanctioned, boycotted, and I don't have any support for the birth of Khadija, for the birth of Fatima Zahra. Hazrat Khadija's sabr, forbearance, tolerance was such that even in a lengthy majlis, I would not be able to explain it. Those who know how difficult it is to part with wealth, you will know how difficult Khadija alayhi salam's jihad was, giving everything in the way of Allah. Not thinking that what will I do in my retirement? What will I do when a rainy day comes? You know, the banks and different places talk about a rainy day savings. Make sure you save for a rainy day. Make sure you save enough for a time when, for example, if the economy goes bad, that you will have something. Did Hazrat Khadija give any care to this rainy day syndrome that we have got today? Did Hazrat Khadija give any thought that what will happen if the Arabian Peninsula turns against us? And it was for that reason that frequently Rasulullah would be in his room crying, and when somebody would come and ask him, Ya Rasulullah, why are you crying? And the Prophet would reply, I am remembering Khadija. I am remembering Khadija. She was also known as Yatama, the Aitam, the mother of the orphans, because there was not one orphan in Makkah who did not benefit directly from Khadija Tahira. There was not one Gharib or Fakir in the entire Arabian Peninsula who did not directly or indirectly benefit from the wealth of Hazrat Khadija. Islam became Islam. Islam grew because of the wealth of Hazrat Khadija. As the Quran says, oh Muhammad, you were in need and we enriched you. The richness did not come directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the heavens or from a cloud. It was the jihad of Hazrat Khadija Tahira. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Allah, we ask you, we beg you for the sake of this night to give us the sabr, the forbearance, the generosity and the kindness of Hazrat Khadija Tahira, Ya Allah. Let us be able to part with our wealth when we need to, inshallah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, forgive our sins, especially in this holy month of Ramadan al-Sharif, which you have graced and you have blessed, Ya Allah. Let us partake in the benefits of this month. Let us be able to maximize whatever we can do in good deeds, inshallah, in this holy month, and all of our shortcomings be overlooked, Ya Allah. Those who are ill, grant them shifa kamila from their illnesses. Those who are in debt, Ya Allah, help them fulfill their debts. Those who are suffering in any sort of oppression, in any sort of difficulties, Ya Allah, hasten the downfall of the oppressors and grant the mustadafin a speedy victory. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect our ulama, our maraja, the mujtahideen who are serving while the Imam is in occultation. Grant them a long and healthy life and safety in the service of Islam and the Ahlul Bayt. We ask you, Ya Allah, for the sake of this month of Ramadan al-Sharif, to return our Imam, our Mawla, Imam al-Hujjah. Make us amongst the Ashab and the Ansar of the Imam. Let us see Zamana al-Dhuhur with our own eyes. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. If we can ask the Mu'mineen to recite one Surah Fatiha for all the Marhumin who are no longer with us, preceded by a salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم. صدق الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما